The undisputed queen of shotgun shooting is the United States' Kim Rhode. At the age of 10, Kim shot her first 100 straight at American Skeet. At 15, she won her first ever ISSF World Cup medal, and no surprise to anyone, at just the age of 17, she became the sport's youngest ever Olympic gold medalist with her win in the double trap competition in Atlanta. She went to the next 5 Olympics and medalled in all of them. Needless to say, nobody has come close to equaling that record. The Kim Rhode story is going to take some telling. Please find a comfortable seat, sit back and enjoy.
As I mentioned in the introduction, the undisputed queen of shotgun shooting is Kim Rhode. So thanks for your time.
Thanks for having me. I apologize for the surroundings, but I'm in a hotel as always. We're constantly traveling, but I'm glad I'm here and happy to do the interview.
Let's go back to the start. When we first met, I think it was 95, and you were a double trap shooter. I really didn't know about your Skeet background. And of course, you won a medal in your first year in 95, and then you went on to win the Olympics, as we all know. But was it hard for you to make the transition from American Skeet to double trap? Because they're quite different events.
It really was for me. In those days, I was quite younger. And so the transition for me was going from American Skeet to trap, just in general. I had never really shot a lot of trap. And also, I never really shot a lot of 12 gauge. So I actually shot 20 in the 12 gauge events in American Skeet at that time because I was so small frame. And originally I started off with a 20 gauge with 30 or 32 inch barrels, I can't remember, shooting bunker, and then progressed to a 12 gauge right before the 1996 Olympics. So it was a challenge. It was something completely different, and it took a lot of work, not going to lie.
So you only turned to a 12 gauge just before you won the Olympic Games?
Yes. Yeah. I shot, I was shooting actually 20 gauge. We were shooting an American Skeet. I remember we were shooting something like 20,000 registered targets a year. I was like AAA in all 4 gauges at the time, but I was AAA in 12, but we were allowed to shoot 20 in the 12 gauge events. And so that's what I was doing. I wasn't really shooting a 12 gauge. There was no need. I was so small, and my frame and everything else at the time, it was much more beneficial for me to shoot a 20. But when we started shooting the trap targets, the distance and the speed and the harder target kind of required me to switch, as it was much more of a disadvantage to be shooting a 20 gauge. And we recognized that and made the switch, and the rest is history.
It takes me back a little ways, you touched on it a little bit before, but about us, spending a little bit of time together. And I remember spending a long weekend with you. It took me about 3 months to recover from our 3 days of training together. You've always put a lot of rounds to your gun. How many rounds were you shooting when you did do the crossover from Skeet to double trap?
Well, I've always shot a lot. I mean, that's no secret. I mean, you used to come out and shoot with us on the summers. I remember that quite fondly. We were quite young. We had a lot of fun. But I would say anywhere from 500 to 1,000 rounds a day. And I was doing that 7 days a week, and I still do that even to this day. So I think that you never stop learning, and that you have to be real with yourself, and whatever that number is to make you comfortable in competition, it is. And for me, it seems to be a higher number.
Kim, who taught you to shoot double trap? I used to love watching you shoot doubles, because you weren't the fastest double trap shooter in the world, but you were extremely accurate. And I always admired the fact that you could hold off on the second target in doubles and not pull the trigger till you were absolutely sure you're on it. And it's a trait that I never had. I used to have to shoot within a certain time, but your timing was a little bit slower than others, but far more accurate. Who taught you to do that? Just
kind of translated over from my Skeet shooting. To be truthful, I was always taught that you see the target, you see the lead. So for me, I never spot shot. And I think that was something that kind of progressed more and more in the doubles side. We saw a lot quicker shots being made. I just kind of stayed more steady, but it also made me more accurate when the wind picked up or in any kind of varying conditions that we had. And it always played, I think, to my advantage in that sense. But I was coached by just a lot of different people. My main coach is my father. And it was just something that, you just kind of had, I guess. I don't know. I mean, I didn't really have any one particular person that taught me trap. It was a whole lot of different people and kind of taking a little bit from everyone to make it make me, I guess, or make me who I am.
Watching you shoot any discipline, you make it look easy, I must admit. You know, when I watch you shoot skeet, it does look in slow motion, and the same thing, you can see you're definitely very accurate in how you shoot any target. I did notice, which I found really quite interesting, that you have on your ISSF profile that you're left eye dominant. And I've shot with you a little bit, as we've spoken about, and I've never seen you tape your glass. I didn't think you ever shut an eye, and I know you shoot off your right shoulder. So I'm just extremely interested to know, is the ISSF side accurate?
It is accurate. I am dominant left eye. And I originally, when I started shooting very young, and I was right eye dominant. And as I started competing and shooting more and more, at a certain point, I noticed that my scores kind of dropped off. And at that point, I realized that at some age or whatever, I switched to being left eye dominant. And so it was no point in me going to shooting left-handed at that point after shooting thousands of rounds right-handed. So I just put a piece of tape on the inside of my lens, and away I went. And I've been shooting that way ever since. But I would say that about 80% or 90% of most women are dominant left eye. It runs very high, much more so in women. But at the same time, too, I've never looked at it as like a disadvantage or anything. But if you are left eye dominant, you should shoot left-handed.
I agree.
I mean, especially if you're learning.
Yeah.
You're gonna learn right. I just didn't.
Yeah.
I didn't know. I was so young. I mean, I started competing when I was 10 in American Skeet, and I was actually shooting before that, doing hunting and stuff. And you know, when you've shot so many rounds right-handed, I'm actually ambidextrous, but it wouldn't matter if I mounted right or left. I actually mount the gun right down the middle. So it wouldn't matter. So either way, I would have to tape.
Vinnie Hancock, he joined the Army and he got out of there. He wasn't there for that long. Did you ever contemplate joining the marksmanship unit?
Oh, most definitely. I mean, they tried to recruit me quite a bit. I just was so young, and I had set up everything in California. There really wasn't a need for me to join the Army. I had a range to shoot at. I had my parents. I had a sponsor, which was Winchester at the time, and still to this day, providing me ammunition. So, I mean, I had all that in place. So there really wasn't a need for me to join the Army. And that really was the deal breaker for me and why I never joined. But I mean, I look at all of them and just can't thank them enough for all their service. I mean, they're all just incredible people and have such interesting backgrounds. And yeah, it just didn't work out. It just had everything in place already, and there just was no need in going in that direction for me.
The one thing that I find that's interesting with your success, and particularly when you look at some of the Europeans that you've had to compete against, in ISSF, they have had an enormous amount of competition in international skeet and in double trap earlier days. But you really haven't had that much competition. In ISSF in the United States, you could count the number of competitions you shoot in on your fingers. But you've been able to substitute that with obviously very good training. But for someone that's starting out, would you suggest that they shoot as much competition as possible? Because you've mentioned you were a 10-year-old shooting competition. Did you have the foundations early and you thought that you didn't need to keep competing all the time?
Tough question to answer, because I'm a firm believer that there are two types of people in competition. And you really see it in practice. You have the type of person that in practice will shoot, you know, a 20, 22, but when they go into competition, they'll shoot like a 24, 25. And I tended to be more in that category. Whereas you had the other type that would shoot 24, 25 in practice, but when they went to competition, they shot a 20 or 21. And it had a lot more to deal with the pressure and different things. I always enjoyed the competitions, enjoyed the pressure. And I think a lot of that played into just my DNA and who I was and how I was raised. I started very young in competitions, and I never thought that I couldn't achieve the gold, even if I didn't have the ability. I always went out there and did the very best I could, and let the chips lay where they may. And at the end of the day, I shot about 20,000 registered targets a year leading up to the Olympics in American skeet. And I think a lot of that transitioned over into my international and Olympic arena. But yes, definitely shooting as much competition as you can is always a good thing. But I also can't underscore enough the importance of practice. And I think people have to be willing to face their fears and recognize what they're afraid of or what target they're having an issue with, and really drill that target, not try to please the crowd behind them, but actually calm the voice within them so that when they step out on that line, they have no doubt that they can't hit every single target. They have no doubt that they can't win. And I think that's something that I'm very good at doing and have done quite a bit in my practice.
You speak of calming the voice. I love that saying. Do you have any tips on how to do that?
Just don't miss. No, I mean, I think anybody would be lying if they said that they don't have those fears. I mean, everybody has fears of something. Whether it be the competition, whether it be a target, whether it be not succeeding or succeeding. I mean, everybody has something, but I think it's being realistic with yourself and honest with yourself, because you may not want to share that with anybody. You may not want to, tell your coaches or your other competitors or your teammates, but at the end of the day, you still know. And I think calming that voice is the most important thing. And so I think doing drills, practicing that target, shooting it twice as much, whatever it takes to calm that voice so that when you step out there, you can hit every one. And I think a lot of people tend to shy away from that and just say, oh, I got it, and they hit one and walk off instead of, you might miss a couple, but, you want to hit like 5 or 10 or 25 before you're, okay, I really have it. And maybe do that for a month or a week. But at the end of the day, it's whatever that number is to make it right in your head.
How long did it take you to get used to the reverse pairs in international skeet when that was brought in?
Well, I definitely played on the American skeet that I have. So, I mean, at the end of the day, I think that helped me a lot. I think one of the biggest transitions for me was the gun mount, going from American skeet and doubles. We all had the gun mounted. And so going to international, that was my biggest challenge, much more than just hitting the doubles or the reverse doubles. I mean, at the end of the day, a target's a target in my book. And if it flies between the high house and the low house, I have no excuse on why I can't hit it.
Can I take you back to one of the most awesome displays of shooting I had a chance to see? And I was lucky, I had a front row seat for a lot of your medals. But the 2012 Olympic Games in London, what you did to those other women that day, it was cruel. Some of them never recovered from it. I reckon one of them sitting beside me. It was an awesome display. You shot 74 in qualification. You hit 25 perfect shots in the final, and you won by 8. Nobody wins the Olympic Games by 8, but you did. And do you think that was your greatest day ever?
I mean, I don't think it's my greatest day ever, because I think there's more days ahead. We're all going for that perfect score, that 100 straight. But I mean, it definitely was an amazing day. I mean, I don't think I realized at the moment when I was in it where I was at. I knew I was at the Olympics and I knew I was shooting well, but I didn't even realize until I missed that I was perfectly straight, because I was just going, everything was just flowing. I always say it's easy to win the gold. It's hard to win the bronze, because when you're winning the gold, everything is going well, everything's clicking, and it's just flowing. It's natural. But when you're shooting bronze and, at that level, you know that you're struggling. And that's when it's hard. And that's when you really have to dig deep and overcome the pressure and a lot of other things to walk away with the bronze. So I always say the gold medal's easy. The bronze is the more challenging one. But yeah, I mean, I look back at London, it was amazing. I didn't realize what I had accomplished until I'd missed that one bird. And I think that just goes to show the zone that I was in, and just how comfortable I was, and knowing that I could hit everything, and really counting on my training and just let it go. I mean, at that point when you're at the Olympics, you got to just lay all the chips out there, and it's going to be what it's going to be. And
you know you're in a dominant position when after you walk off station 6, half the grandstand gets up and leaves because the competition's over. And that's pretty much what happened that day. You ruined it for television. It was this final system was supposed to be brought in to make it interesting right up to the last shot. The last 10 minutes of the London Olympics were over.
Well, you know what I remember is when I was on station 5, I think that's when I knew I had won. And I was already crying on 5. And I still had like 3 or 4 more stations to go. And it was like, don't cry, don't cry, don't cry, because you still have to hit targets. You still have that world record you're going for. And at that point, it was just like, don't cry, don't cry. But yeah, it was amazing, especially hearing the stands. I always say that the crowd is, you know, there helping you to pull the trigger each and every time, because when you hit a target, it's like, yeah, and they scream. But when you miss, it's like, ooh, and that's a hard thing to block out. So I say that they're right there with me, and they definitely were. I mean, when I hit that last target, they went crazy. I mean, what people were still left in the stands, Russell.
Oh, look, you've been an incredible athlete over a long period of time, but something that, you know, I think we have such a history. I know that when you won in 1996, you spurred a lot of people to go on, you know, particularly people like myself, to believe that they can do it. And I know you've had a long time of inspiring a lot of people into the sport and to continue in their dreams and aspirations. And it really is a credit to you. Personally, as a mother who tried to compete and to balance, you know, family life with shooting life, I mean, nothing blows my mind probably more than how easily you've transitioned into the maternal role and your ability to still compete at such a high level. I mean, do you have any tips for me?
Well, it's definitely not easy. I will say that. I mean, having a little one, I mean, my son Carter takes, I mean, priority over anything. And I know, like, during these COVID times and these challenging times that we're all facing, it's been a challenge. Homeschooling, I'm redoing, seriously, I'm on, second grade now with my son. So it's been a real challenge. And something else to note, my son is dyslexic. So it also makes it even more challenging when you look at it from that aspect, as that there's more classes, more things, more hands-on, more one-on-one. And so I wouldn't change it for a second. But as far as my training goes, I have a very good support team with me that supports me, from my family to my husband to just a lot of other individuals. And I'm very blessed to have that. And I am very open and willing to take that help, because you can't do it on your own. I think a lot of people think that you win an Olympic medal by yourself. And I think one of the Olympians said it best when they say it's like a pie and everybody has a slice, because it takes a lot of hands, a lot of help, and a lot of support from a lot of different people for me to continue to be able to compete. And I thank them every day. I wouldn't be here without them. And I mean, right down from my family to my sponsors, I mean, it takes everyone. And I always say it takes a village to raise a child, and that's true. But it's not easy, but we get through it. You just do what you have to do.
Kim, we've talked about 2012. You won the Olympics in London. 2013, you became a mother. In 2014, you're back shooting, and you broke the hearts of every parazzi user on earth, because you fronted up at the start of the 2014 season carrying a Beretta DT11. For many people, you crossed over to the dark side, and a lot of people thought, at last, we'll finally get even with Kim Rhode. Then you won the first 2 World Cups of the season, and that shut everybody up. But did it take you long to get used to another brand of shotgun?
I'm very fortunate. So, I mean, there are differences between them, don't get me wrong, but I was very fortunate that my stocks and everything are made by Winnick, which is a company out of Missouri that makes nothing but stocks. And so I was able to have a stock made within the thickness of a hair the same. And so for me, it wasn't that big of a transition. And I made sure that the guns were balanced. I mean, I literally took the DT11 off the rack It wasn't made for me. It wasn't specially done. I shoot factory chokes, just what was in there. I switched them out, I think, to where they're just a little bit tighter, but it wasn't made for me. It wasn't specially done. It was literally off the rack. And away I went. And I just shot a lot, practiced, and yeah, it made a huge difference. I will say that the one thing that I noticed the most between them, I mean, both, you never hear me say anything bad about either one, because I love them both to death, but the technology that Beretta is putting into the guns is really one of the main factors why I switched, as well as the lesser recoil. So the DT11, as we all know, is got an internally tapered barrel. The forcing cone runs from the chamber to the choke. And so at the end of the day, when you're shooting 500 to 1,000 rounds a day, every day, that recoil adds up. And so that was one of the biggest factors for me in shooting it that much. I definitely noticed how less fatigued I was, what a difference it made, and just my quickness and ability to get from one target to the other in doubles. I mean, those were all factors that really led me in that direction.
Can I ask you some technical things about your gun? Because a lot of people that watch these will want to know. You mentioned already that you shoot slightly tighter chokes than Skeet. Are you shooting an improved cylinder choke?
I'm shooting a Skeet choke on the first barrel and a light mod on the second.
The shot size, is it the same in the finals as it is during
Yes,
qualification?
same. I don't change any of it. I just shoot it. I shoot number 9s in ammunition, the Winchester AA number 9s. That's what I prefer, with a Skeet choke on the first barrel and a light mod on the second. And I do that for international Skeet. Now, if I was shooting American Skeet, I would shoot Skeet and Skeet. But international, we have the reverse doubles on 3 and 5. And as we all know, that's a very long shot. So it requires a slightly tighter choke. And that's the reason I'm shooting a tighter choke.
And what pattern percentage? Are you shooting a very flat pattern, or do you shoot a 70-30, 80-20 pattern?
So I shoot a very flat pattern, and I shoot the same that I shoot on Skeet as that I do on trap. And that's what has allowed me to transition from one sport to the next, is that I go just solely on my ability to see the target and shoot the target. I don't do any kind of floating or anything of that nature. So I am a flat shooter. Stack the beads, figure 8, and just go.
Yeah, so you do have a center bead on your gun, and you use that as your reference. If
I don't use it anymore, but when you're learning and when you're starting out, you definitely want to have that to help teach yourself how to line up and look down the rib. But after that, I mean, there was no point in me removing it. I kind of just always kept it. And I use it to make sure that my comb hasn't moved or isn't adjusted in one way or the other in transit. But other than that, I don't need to look at it anymore. I mean, it's like walking. When you walk down the street, you don't think right, left, you just do it.
Yeah, exactly. So, when you make a technical change, or, do you, for example, fluctuate in weight or anything like that, do you ever modify your gun in those periods, or do you just leave it once it's set?
No, I do actually. I do modify it. So one of the biggest aspects, and what a lot of people don't realize, is right before this last Olympics, actually, I think right before the Pan American Games that we had, I actually had a lot of my gear stolen. So I lost all my glasses. I lost a lot of stuff. The only thing they didn't get was my vest and my gun. And I got robbed like 2 or 3 times between then and the Olympics. And
You need to move into a better neighborhood.
I know. Well, what can I say? I grew up in a rougher neighborhood. So they got taken right out of my dad's driveway at his house.
Wow.
And they hit us like 2 or 3 times. And they had a device that like unlocked the vehicle. And so we kept taking the stuff in, but you forget things or whatever. It just is what it is. But losing my glasses was a big one because of my dominancy. A lot of people don't realize that when you do have a dominant left eye, you can't just put a piece of tape on at random. There's a whole method to it. There's a system, and it takes time to dial that in. And that is one of the biggest challenges that I've had, and, you know, redialing that back in. And I think I finally got it. But even still, we're still making adjustments to it. But those glasses that I had, I'd shot for like the last 10, 15, 20 years. There was no point in changing them.
Do you use a pattern plate or a pattern board to test your guns?
I do, actually. And I don't just test my guns and stand at a, you know, freehand and shoot them. I think that's a big mistake that a lot of people make, is they go out and they sight in, you know, their guns freehand. And as we all know, in rifle, that is really hard, if not impossible to do, and not something you want to do. So I always say that, you know, a shotgun and rifle are made very similarly. They make the barrel over here and the stock over here and the rib over there, and they kind of put it all together, and you have, you know, one or two guys that are going through making sure that they're all on. I mean, how on are they really? And so I actually go out and I sandbag and actually shoot my shotguns like a rifle, squeeze the trigger off, and make sure that I know exactly how they shoot. And if they're off, I have them lapped. I go in and have them lapped and moved on. And I have to say that with the Beretta, the DT11, it was the first gun that I'd ever had that was on. And I think that's a true testament to Beretta, and didn't have to change anything.
Kim, I want to ask you a sporting question here, so hear me out here. In the United States, which is the easiest of these teams to make? The Boston Celtics, the Chicago White Sox, the San Francisco 49ers, or the women's US Olympic skeet team? Because you have made your life really difficult, and you're to blame for this. You're to blame, because as we all know, you didn't qualify for the 2021 Olympic Games. But this is the interesting stat. Not only didn't you qualify, and these are all different people, so you're not in it. The 2014 world champion's not in it. The 2015 world champion's not in it. The 2017 world champion's not in it. And the 2018 world champion have all missed out on the US Olympic team. And that's a fantastic testament to the depth that the US have got. But really, that's your legacy. You've created this monster. You've driven some of them out of the country.
He thinks it's love, but really, you know, I just wasn't going to hack it, so I had to get out.
Thanks for that, Kim. I've got a wife because of you. But you must look back. You must look back and be very proud of the women that have followed in your footsteps, because it is a difficult team to make. And I'm sure that in Paris, you're going to make these other girls regret the fact that they've made it really difficult for you. But do you take some pride in all this?
Oh, most definitely, without a doubt. I remember when I started off and I went from doubles and transitioned to international skeet, how hard that was for me in a transition, because, and I'm just going to say it, I mean, a lot of the women were not very nice and not very welcoming, and felt that I was coming in and taking something that was rightfully theirs. And at the end of the day, I never wanted anybody to ever have to go through that again. So I have actually mentored and coached some of these girls. The actual Amber English would come and stay with me for summers, and my father and me would help and coach her. And so, I mean, to see them where they are now and to see the team that we have, that's awesome. It only drives me and everybody else to be better. And that's what I want. It's not just about me winning. It's about the United States winning. And I've always felt that way. So I couldn't be prouder.
When the word got out that you'd missed the Olympic team, there were 5 Central European countries that they brought forward their New Year's holiday to actually have a celebration that night, because you really made a lot of people happy. But I want to ask you a question on that, and I've asked the same question of Vincent Hancock and Derek Mine. If you're Italian, if you're an Italian citizen under their selection policy, you'd be in the team. There's no doubt they'd pick you. But the US selection policy is straight, first past the post. It's fair for everybody. Do you see any merit in what the Italians do? I mean, Vincent missed out on the team in 2019 because he had a couple of bad rounds, missed out. you didn't shoot badly, but the other girls shot better. But is that going to be at the detriment of the United States at an event like the Olympic Games?
Who knows? I mean, I don't like to say anything one way or the other. I will say that our selection process constantly changes, and it seems to be changed every Olympic cycle. Now, do I think it's necessarily the best to base it on a series of 1 or 2 matches? No. I think overall it should be done by average over several years. And that's just my opinion. I think overall, in general, you will get a much better outcome in the sense of who's really consistently there, who has the experience, that type of a thing, rather than that rocky story that I think that can possibly happen in that 1 or 2 matches. Not to say that we don't have an excellent team and I'll be in the stands cheering them on. I just definitely think that averages go a long ways. I mean, there's a reason we have an A class, a B class, or even a AAA class. It's because averages speak volume, and I think that needs to be taken into consideration.
When you go on the ISSF website and look at your record, it's remarkable the amount of events that you've medaled in. But the one stat that's a little odd to me is that your Olympic record is way up here. And no disrespect, but your world championship record, strangely, is not that great. I mean, you've won a world championship and you've won another medal, but at the Olympics, it just seems to be really easy for you. At the world championships, it's hard to say to someone like you, you're not that great, Kim, but at the world championships, you're not as good as you are at the Olympics. Why?
Well, because I've always had something happen at the world championships. I think one year I cracked my head open and they put 5 staples in the back of my head.
Well,
another year they were like, I had laryngitis and strep throat so bad that you couldn't fit a pencil down the back of my throat. And that was one year. And they were like telling my roommate to make sure I kept breathing. I always just call that like unlucky, my unlucky competition. I don't know. It's always something. I know the last one, my dad was in surgery the day of my match, and they were doing stuff with him. And yeah, so we just always kind of just like to get through the world championships in one piece. But yeah, I can't explain it, but it just seems like there's always these crazy life changing things that seems to happen just on that match. And it really, I never look at any match as being, oh, this is the world championships, or oh, this is the Olympics. I think that they're all just a competition, being that I've competed in so many. So I can't say that it's because of the world championships that I'm, not performing, or because I don't really, never really mattered to me one way or the other. So it just seems to be unlucky, or I seem to be unlucky when it comes to that one match.
Well, touching on crazy, I think 2020 is the year of crazy. So I'm hoping when we get past this, all the craziness will go away. And from 2021, 2022, whenever the shooting calendar starts back, that I know that you will be the one that's best suited to fixing that record that Russell was so kind to bring up.
It's all good. I mean, at the end of the day, I love what I do, and win, lose, or draw, I have a lot of fun out there. I remember a lot of good times with you guys. I remember when you guys were dating and we were in Barcelona at, I think it was the Hard Rock Cafe, way back, if I do recall. At the end of the day, I mean, that's what people remember. I mean, people don't remember the scores or what you shot or how many World Cups you won. It's the people, the places, the things, and at the end of the day, that's what's important to me. So I appreciate Russell pointing all that out. Thanks, Russell. But at the end of the day, I just love what I do, and I'm going to continue. And hopefully I have a few more in me. And I look forward to having the Olympics in 2028 in LA.
Yeah, that's a home ground advantage that no one will be looking forward to taking you on. Kim, I want to talk to your life outside of competition.
How quick he changes the subject.
Yes, moving on now, because I know where this will go. I find you intriguing in so many ways, but you do so much off the shooting range. You're the chair of the ISSF Athletes Committee. You've taken on the Californian government as the lead plaintiff against their ammunition laws. You're fighting them, and I want to get your views on that shortly. You've also on several other boards that a lot of people may not know about. Do you want to enlighten us on the other things that you're doing?
You're going to make me list them all, huh?
I'm interested.
Let me see here. So I'm on the board of the NRA, and I was voted on by the millions of members across the United States. I'm also on the board, the honorary board of the CRPA, which is the California Rifle and Pistol Association. Both those are extremely political in the United States. I'm also on the board of Kids and Clays. We raise millions of dollars for families that have sick and ill children by throwing chutes around the United States. And then I'm also on the board of ISSF. I'm the athlete rep. I was voted on by all of the shooters to represent and chair the board for the athletes. So I've been really busy, especially since they canceled the Olympics, or postponed the Olympics, I should say, till 2021.
That did you a favour, because you wouldn't have had time to go there.
I know. I mean, if it was one that I was going to miss, this might have been the best one. But I mean, I think at the end of the day, you always want to make the Olympic team. But at the same time, I'll still be there cheering on my teammates. So I couldn't be happier. But no hard feelings. I figure, 6 out of 7 is pretty good. Yeah. That's a pretty good odds. I'll take it all day long.
But the big one I want to talk to you about, you've got a US election coming forward in November. And I know you're very political within the Republican Party, and you did quite a lot, I know, at the last election. Are you still as involved? And secondly, is Trump a chance to win again?
Well, Trump is definitely going to win again. I called it at the last Olympics. I'm going to call it again and say that he's going to win again. But yes, I'm very active in the Trump victory campaign. I'm on his Second Amendment coalition, as well as Gun Owners for America's board. So yes, to answer your question, I am very political. And I think I recognize that after the London Games. I think a lot of people don't realize that one of the first questions I got asked after I won the gold medal in London wasn't, what is it like representing your country? Or can you comment on, what it's, the training or the technique or the pressure, or anything like that? Instead, it was the first question that I got asked was, can you comment on Aurora? And of course, that was the mass shooting at the theater. And at that point, I realized that I needed to really get more involved and really educate people about the sport that we all take for granted, and just try to change that narrative so that we can, really showcase the sport that we have, which is really about safety and responsibility and discipline, and how we are one of the safest sports in the Olympics, how we have more countries that compete in shooting than any other event, and just the list goes on and on. And so at that point is when I really got involved. I spoke at the RNC. I've done numerous political events, and I'm currently being sued by the Attorney General of New York because I'm on the board of the NRA, and I'm also part of the class action lawsuit against the state. It's Rhode versus Becerra on Prop 63, which is one of the ammunition bans.
Kim, are they suing you personally because you're on the board of the NRA?
I can't really comment too much about that, but I am on the board, and yes, the Attorney General is suing the board of the NRA.
Do you feel that is a burden as well, the fact that you feel as though you have to be the spokesperson?
Well, I don't think it's a burden as much as I think it's an opportunity to really highlight the wonderful things that shooting has done for both me and my family, as well as the millions of other shooters out there that may not have the voice or the opportunity or the platform to speak. And I think really the biggest thing is just really educating people about what it is that we do and about the different policies. I know that's one of the biggest things in talking to people, is just the lack of knowledge, the lack of understanding. And I think that's something we need to do more about.
I know that you are not even considering retiring, but can you map out the next 3 or 4 years for us, what you plan to do? Have you got a goal, obviously, to get to LA in 7 years' time or 8 years' time? But as missing the Olympic team this time made you a tougher competitor for next time?
I mean, I was kind of laughing with my dad and saying, you know, when we were driving home, because I actually drove home from the Olympic trials and not making it. And I was telling him that, you know, it's kind of a blessing in a lot of ways. I mean, right now with everything going on in the world, me being away is just not really an opportunity that I can do with my son and school and trying to teach him. And so I think everything happens for a reason, and I'm a firm believer in that, and I have no regrets. I actually am very good with it, and actually almost too good with it. I think because when you train and you give it your all and you know that you did everything you possibly can and there was nothing that you could have done to change it, then I think you're just okay with it. And for me, I've quite enjoyed my time off. I'm not going to lie. It's been fun. It's been nice to be home. Even though I'm not home right now, I'm in a hotel room. As you can see, here's the rack of some sort. But I mean, it's been amazing. It's been nice. But at the same time, it does make me more hungry to get back at it and to definitely change some things, which I've already done to better myself for the next trials. And for the next, 3 or 4 years, you're going to see me back at it and probably training harder, because I didn't make it the last time and I don't want to see that happen again. And I think Vinny will be the first one to tell you the same. I mean, when you don't make something, it makes you train that much harder and realize, how important it really is. But I also think too that a lot of people take it for granted, and that's one thing I never did and never have and never will. So I appreciate every chance I've ever had to compete in the Olympics, but at the same time, hopefully I can make it again, and we'll just go from there.
I'm sure you'll have a lot of people scared, but it's very, I think I've never heard you be anything but a half glass full sort of person. You've always had a way to put a positive spin, even in not an ideal situation. And I'm confident that that's one of the reasons that you're so successful, and it's a real credit to you.
Thanks, Lauryn. I mean, we go back so many years. I mean, since we were kids. I was looking at the picture you sent of the family, and it's hard to believe us both now moms. It's just amazing how fast time has flown. And yeah, I appreciate that. But yeah, I always try to look at the positive things in life and just roll with it. It's going to be what it's going to be, and I'm going to have a lot of fun doing it. And at the end of the day, hopefully we walk away with something, and if we don't, then we'll try it again next time, rack them all up and do it again.
Has Carter shot it all yet?
Carter has gotten his, I think, feet wet a little bit, as far as we got him pulling, we got him bird dogging. I mean, we're raising him right, but at the end of the day, he hasn't shot yet. And he will, though, very soon, and he's very addicted to it.
Have you worked out which eye is dominant?
Yeah, he's definitely left eye dominant, especially with all his Nerf guns. I'm just going to leave it at that.
Kim, we really appreciate your time today. It's been a fantastic career. It's not over. I expect the next World Championship you'll do really well at. You'll do really well at the next World. But we look forward in your progress past Paris and on to LA, and who knows after that. You're only 41. You're still a baby.
Appreciate you saying that. And, we'll just see what happens. I mean, why quit now? I love what I do, the travel, the people. And, hopefully I have a few more in me, and we can just keep breaking those records. We got to get that 100 straight.
Kim, you've been an inspiration. Thanks for your time today.
Thanks for having me.